History has a bitter way of rewarding those who must have too clear a vision. American engineers who made their own futures with their own hands and saw the market sneer and turn their backs. No, it was not the wrong idea. The reason is that the world was just not ready yet. These concepts did not disappear, they circled round, bided their time and returned with fresher chrome and increased marketing budget. Today, we are numbering the 20 American automotive features that were so far above their time that even the industry itself knew not what to do with them. Subscribe now in case you like the forgotten automotive history. We parallel America. And this is what the car magazines never cover on the cover. Number 20. Air conditioning. Packard, 1940. In 1940, Packard posed a very basic question. Why should a luxury car be ruined in summer? Their air conditioning system fitted into the car as factory fitting was the first to be offered in an American production car. The issue was the hardware. It took up the biggest part of the trunk, was loud and extremely expensive. The decision to save on sweating was made by buyers. Packard dropped it by 1942. However, with the development of refrigerant technology in the 1950s, air conditioning never left. In the present day, a car without it is uncivilized. Packard had the right answer. The world simply required 2 decades to be able to afford it. Number 19. The electric self-starter. Cadillac, 1912. Until 1912, to start a car, one had to pick up an iron hand crank and hope the motor would not break your wrist. And it did, on a regular basis. All of that was substituted by a button by Cadillac Charles Kettering. Opponents termed it as unnecessary coddling. What Kettering actually realized is that fear and physical risk were pushing half of the potential market out of cars completely. As soon as the crank was removed, driving became open to women, aged purchasers, and those who lacked the strength of a mechanic. All ignition since 1912 is directly descended out of this Cadillac decision. Number 18. The turbocharged engine. Oldsmobile Jetfire, 1962. Prior to 1962, turbochargers were part of an aircraft and race car. Oldsmobile redefined that supposition with the Jetfire, the first turbocharged mass-marketed automotive vehicle ever sold to American buyers. It was a brilliant idea. Squeeze air into a small engine and squeeze out the performance which the displacement alone could not command. There was only one weakness in executing it, rather fatal, since it was a water methanol injection system, which drivers always forgot to replenish, mowing engines off. Sales collapsed. However, the idea of forced induction in passenger cars was completely right, and decades later, when all of the manufacturers had to cope with the emissions requirement, they turned to the same solution. Number 17. Mechanical fuel injection. Chevrolet Corvette, 1957. The 1957 Corvette of Chevrolet had a Rochester fuel injection that generated 1 horsepower per cubic inch. This was my vehicle in 1957. It gave the accuracy that carburetors could not provide. Quicker throttle reaction, improved cold starting, constant power. Enthusiasts loved it. Mechanics hated it, as no one could service the thing without special training. By the early 1960s, Chevrolet removed it on the majority of models. In the 1980s, the electronics made the heavy lifting in fuel injection and is presently in every car on the road. Number 16. The fully automatic transmission. Oldsmobile, 1940. In 1940, purists were offended when Oldsmobile launched the Hydra-Matic, the first fully automatic transmission on an American mass-market car. Shifting gears was a skill. Skills were dignity. Automatics were referred to as lazy engineering in the case of lazy drivers. What Oldsmobile had in fact created was a barrier remover. Millions of individuals who were scared by gears in the manuals could now afford just driving. The Hydra-Matic sold in vast numbers, was licensed to other companies, and became the prototype of all the subsequent automatics. The specialty item now is the manual transmission. The automatic is the default. Number 15. Power steering, Chrysler Crown Imperial, 1951. Driving a heavy American was physically challenging in the year 1950. In 1951, the Crown Imperial by Chrysler came with a commercially available hydrostatic power steering on an American production car. Critics have complained that it made roads feelless, made drivers passive, it dissociated man and machine. Chrysler engineers reacted by referring to the parking lots that were crowded with weary drivers with sore shoulders. After the reliability was established, the industry ran swiftly. By the 1960s, power steering was everywhere. The Crown Imperial merely demanded to know whether it was necessary to drive using brute force. The answer turned out to be no. Number 14. Cruise control. Chrysler, 1958. Ralph Teeter was an engineer who was blind, and he had developed cruise control due to the bumpy driving of his lawyer, who was causing him physical sickness during long commutations. In 1958, Chrysler introduced the technology, which was called autopilot. It was uncomfortable to people around you. Taking your foot off the pedal and entrusting the car did not seem responsible. Adoption crawled for years. Then the American highways were widened, driving long distances became normal, and overnight, having your leg on the 5-hour journey no longer seemed to be reckless, but seemed to be self-evident. A blind engineer was able to solve an issue that the eyes of the world were unaware of. Number 13. Factory seat belts. Ford, 1956. In 1956, Ford provided seat belts that were fitted in factories and sold them to buyers in America, directly in terms of safety. The response was opposition and conspiracies. There are cases where drivers really thought that wearing belts would trap them in an accident vehicle that is on fire. The rivals publicly ridiculed Ford and said that safety in advertisements reminded the customers that cars might kill them. The packages sold poorly. However, life was harsh and survival was cutthroat, and laws at some point forced the market what the market was unwilling to select. The absence of one now would seem a carelessness. It was a fashion in 1956 to wear one as a paranoic. Number 12. Tire pressure monitoring. Chevrolet Corvette, 1986. The 1986 Corvette had sensors which would alert the driver when the tire pressure was dropped excessively. The majority of motorists felt that they would feel a punctured tire. The engineers were aware that the new radial tires were capable of losing the vital pressure and still appear as ideal ones, causing disastrous handling errors without any notice. Nobody needed the technology, and nobody paid it. This was an untoasted feature until the national tire failure crisis in the early 2000s caused the discussion. In 2008, the federal law required TPMS on all new American cars. Corvette got the answer 2 decades when they were ahead of their time. Number 11. The production airbag, Oldsmobile Toronado, 1974. In 1974, General Motors also provided an option of driver airbag to the 1974 Oldsmobile Toronado, the first vehicle in America to be available with the technology. The reaction of people was indifference. Bags that were deployed in the early days were carried using explosive power. There were costly systems which were not consistent. The insurance companies had not been making the investment worthwhile by increasing premiums. The airbag discreetly disappeared off the choices list. The federal pressure continued to build throughout the 1980s. New requirements were implemented, and by the 1990s, airbags were found in all new automobiles. The neglected 1974 introduction of the Toronado was Chapter 1 of a safety tale that currently avert tens of thousands of deaths annually. Number 10. Keyless entry keypad. Ford, 1980. Ford developed a car-numbered keypad which was mounted on the door in 1980, which unlocked the car without the use of a physical key. The reason was clear in a decade where car theft was on the increase and counterfeiting keys was an easy matter. The response was not burning. The purchasers were not urgently rushed to a solution to a problem that they not yet personally felt. Ford maintained the feature over decades. It is nowadays entirely a normal experience to enter a code, press a proximity fob, or even hold your phone and unlock your car. The keypad by Ford was the initial American jump into a world without keys, which we now fully accept. Number 9. The Digital Instrument Cluster. Cadillac Seville, 1978. In 1978, Cadillac produced the Seville that had digital readouts instead of analog gauges with glowing numbers. Drivers found it alienating. Needles was sincere and natural. Digits felt cold. Up to the late 1980s, digital dashboards had a notorious reputation of dying in the summer heat and not working in the winter cold, and the backlash had put analog back into vogue during the course of the decade. But nevertheless, the idea was always right. With the technology of display catching up, the digital clusters made a comeback with customization and depth of information that no needle array could match. Number 8. The Intermittent Wiper Windshield Wiper. Ford, 1969. Robert Kearns lost the sight of one eye partly. He was driving in light rain, and the constant wipers on a slightly misting windshield were more disorienting a phenomenon than the rain. He developed an electronic circuit that simulated the human blink, stopping between sweeps according to circumstances. The technology was picked up by Ford in 1969. What ensued was one of the most brutal patent battles ever in the history of the automotive industry, as Kearns battled over decades against some of the biggest manufacturers on getting credit on the invention they were freely making money off of. His court victories came. His invention is now found in each and every car. Number 7. Infrared Night Vision. Cadillac DeVille, 2000. Cadillac released a forward-facing infrared camera on the DeVille in 2000, which indicates temperature images of passers-by and items that are out of reach of the headlights. It genuinely worked. The issue was human. Deciphering a thermal image on the road was like a second job, and the feature was thousands of dollars more than the existing one. Buyers weren't convinced. The alternative faded away. Never to be forgotten, though, was the idea of broadening the perception with technology. The contemporary night vision is more integrated and widespread. The Cadillac version was merely the initial American draft of a concept in which its time was still yet to arrive. Number 6. Passenger Cars All-Wheel Drive. AMC Eagle, 1980. All-wheel drive implied military machines and trucks. American Motors put that belief to the test with the 1980 Eagle, a passenger auto fitted with a full-time four-wheel drive. It accelerated like a vehicle and was winter road worthy with a grip that was almost unjust. The market was confused. AMC was a weak brand attempting to sell a high-end concept on weak grounds. A WD did not make it to become a universal expectation in the company. But the Eagle justified the idea. The industry had simply waited so as to be listening to a more powerful messenger. Number 5. Factory GPS Navigation. General Motors, 1995. In 1995, GM became the first company in the U.S. to offer factory-fitted GPS navigation on its products. The system operated on satellite positioning and turn-by-turn maps that were saved in physical CD-ROMs to direct the driver. In 1995, the vast majority of Americans didn't lose their faith in paper maps and personal instinct. The aspect was opulent to most of the consumers. Then came smartphones, then live maps, and being lost in the car with a functioning electronics began to be a shame. The system at GM 1995 was not what you have in your pocket. It was the evidence that drivers would one day just give in to the machine when it was the machine that knew how to go. Number 4. Collision warning based on radar. Ford Research, 1990s. By the mid-1990s, engineers at Ford were devising radar-based front-end collision warning systems to production cars, technology to tell the driver when there is a distance approaching that could cause a collision. The equipment was excessively bulky, costly, and untrustworthy during rain and fog. Questions of liability were really open. Ford shelved it. Nevertheless, the study became the feeding ground of the forward collision warning system and the automatic emergency braking system, which are now considered as ordinary features in almost all production automobiles. The researchers of Ford were constructing the architecture. It only took the industry another decade before it became possible to make the sensors small enough to fit. Number 3. Anti-lock brake technology. Lincoln Continental, 1954. Lincoln is a pioneer in mechanical anti-skid rear brakes, which are now publicly known to be ABS experiments, available on the 1954 Continental, which was engineered to avoid lockup of the wheels in sudden stops. The idea was the same as that of the new ABS: maintain the rotation of the wheels, maintain the control of the car when panic required all at once. It made a very expensive car, even more expensive and complex, and its advantage was not noticed by any driver who would never have a car lockup that was avoided by the use of lockup. It was another 30 years before EABS matured. The mechanical system envisaged by Lincoln in 1954 was the crude, much blotted out first American move toward what is now a silent standard of safety used in every car on every road. Number 2. The hybrid powertrain. Woods Motor Vehicle Company, 1916. A car in 1916 under an American company known as Woods Motor Vehicle was a hybrid vehicle that was made by integrating a gasoline engine with an electric motor, whereby the car operated on electric power or used the gasoline engine depending on the speed and loads. The electric motor was clean and silent when it was running at low speed. At highway velocities, gasoline replaced it. The dual power was designed well and totally incapable of competing with the cheap gasoline that appeared to flood the market, where oil appeared to be limitless. The vehicle sold in small quantities and disappeared. Almost 100 years later, the whole world car industry reinvented the very structure and named it the future. Woods had it in 1916. Number 1. The electric vehicle production. Detroit Electric, 1907. Electric cars were winning before gasoline won. Starting in 1907, Detroit Electric made battery-powered cars, which could cover more than 100 miles at a single charge and which needed no gear changes, made no noise, and needed no hand crank. Doctors who were on extensive rounds throughout the day and city drivers who cherished reliability, above all, preferred them. Over 13,000 cars were constructed by Detroit Electric. Then cheap gasoline arrived. Mass production by Ford enabled the combustion to be significantly cheaper, and the growing American highway ensured that range became the priority, such that batteries could not achieve. The electric car did not fail to work since the idea was not bad. It lost due to economics and infrastructure, not engineering. And now it is over 100 years later, and the whole world automotive industry is galloping frantically in the direction that Detroit Electric was selling on the American streets in 1907. That is the trend in the entire 20. The conception comes at the right time, right and in full. It is not acceptable in the market. It is costly, too complicated, too ahead of the people. The engineers are forgotten, and the same issue comes around a generation later. That person that has solved it better on time, and everybody chalks it out as an innovation. The actual inventors did not go wrong. They were just early. And in a market where time is more than nearly everything, a premature and erroneous proposition appears exactly like a premature and erroneous one, until the history refuses to admit you correct any longer. Should this strike a blow at our hopes, leave a like. We get on with the telling of these stories. Leave a comment. What do you consider to be the most surprising feature? The 1916 hybrid? The 1907 electric car? End of something you never thought of being American? We read every single one. And subscribe to Parallel America. Have you not? We discover the American stories that have fallen on the cracks and keep them not lost. New episodes every week. We'll see you in the next one.